Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Good evening and welcome to Spring Global on Western Spring Television. Now the headlines. Russian missile strike hits Kyiv, another major city in the north and south Ukraine. Thousands of people protest at the Tunisian capital demanding an end to President Kay's side authoritarian drift. Indonesia deploys warship to monitor Chinese Coast Guard vessel active in the North Natuna Sea. My name is Evelyn Ohiola, and now the news in details. We begin with the Russian-Ukraine war. A Russian missile strike has hit the capital of Ukraine, Kyiv, and other major cities from Chernihiv and Sumy in the north of Zaporizhia, Kherson in the south. According to the governor of Kyiv region, Oleksiy Kuleba, 18 private houses were damaged in the outlying Kyiv region, but no casualties was recorded. He further stated that a fire has been contained at a critical infrastructure facility in the region. The Kharkiv governor, Oleh Syniehubov, said Russian forces fired 2 S-300 missiles at the northeastern Kyiv's industrial district. According to the deputy head of the president's office, Kyrylo Tymoshenko, people are trapped on the rubble in the city of Dnipro in east-central Ukraine following the strike. A Turkish official has said Ankara is ready to push for local ceasefires in Ukraine, warning that neither Moscow nor Kyiv have the military means to win the war. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's foreign policy advisor Ibrahim Kalin disclosed this to newsmen, stating that it seemed unlikely that the warring sides are ready to strike an overarching peace deal anytime soon. Mr. Kalin said Turkey is willing to push for local ceasefires and small localized de-escalations, adding that neither party is in a position to win the war militarily. Turkey has used its good relations with both Moscow and Kyiv to try and mediate an end to the nearly 11-month war, with Turkey hosting 2 early rounds of peace talks and helping to strike a UN-backed agreement restoring Ukrainian grain deliveries across the Black Sea. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky has asked to address a United Nations high-level meeting of the General Assembly on the eve of the first anniversary of Russia's February 24 invasion. Ukraine's first deputy foreign minister, Ermine Zaporova, made this known in an interview, stating that many factors need to be in place for him to be able to make the trip to New York. She said, first and foremost, the military situation on ground will determine the visit, adding that Ukraine's intelligence service had warned that Russia is planning a very serious offensive in February. The visit will be Zelensky's second trip outside Ukraine since the war started, after a surprise visit to Washington, D.C. on December 21st to meet U.S. President Joe Biden. Ukraine local authorities have said the frontline city of Soledar, which Russia had claimed to have captured, is still controlled. The regional governor Pavlo Kyrylenko on national television said Soledar is controlled by Ukrainian authorities, stating that the military still controls the town. However, he stated that battles continue in and outside of the city, adding that of a group of at least 10 vessels of Russia's Black Sea Fleet on January 11 was unlikely to be in preparation for amphibious assault operations. The ministry in its latest intelligence update said the naval force still continues to prioritize force protection over offensive or patrol operations. Tensions remain high in Ukraine as officials expect Russia to step up its special military operation as it's the 1-year mark. In Africa, thousands of protesters marched in the Tunisian capital against President Kay's side's increasingly authoritarian drift, demanding his steps down. Protesters are also marking 12 years since the Arab Spring Revolution erupted across the region. The Central Avenue Habib Bourguiba, the artery of the capital, Tunis, and a key site for the revolution, was crowded with thousands of protesters waving Tunisian flags and demanding the fall of the regime. A heavy police presence remained outside the Interior Ministry building on the street along with water cannon. Protesters had pushed past police and metal barricades to reach the avenue, defying initial efforts by the authorities to keep separate several parallel protests that had been called by different political parties and civil society organizations. Tanzania's opposition leader and former presidential candidate Tundu Lissu has said he will return home this month from exile in Europe after the Tanzanian government's decision to lift a ban on political rallies. President Samia Suluhu Hassan lifted a 6.5-year ban on political rallies last week, part of a reconciliation strategy after taking over the presidency in March 2021, following the death of our predecessor, John Magufuli. The ban imposed by Magufuli in 2016 allowed elected politicians to conduct rallies in their constituencies, but barred other political rallies and protests. For the lifting of the legal ban on political activity, Lissu said on Twitter that it was time to return home and get back to work. He revealed that he will arrive the country on January 25th, adding that 2023 is an important year in the history of the country. Moving to the United Kingdom, Prince Harry claims he had enough material for 2 books and did not include some things in his memoir because his father and brother would never forgive him. He told the Daily Telegraph there were some things he does not want the world to know. He also said he wanted an apology to his wife, Meghan, from his family members. Spare, which was published this week, has become the fastest-selling non-fiction book ever in the UK. The book outlines a long list of grievances against the royal family, as well as unresolved trauma over the death of his mother, his struggles with mental health, the isolated life he led before meeting Meghan, and the breakdown of relations with family members. Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace have both said they will not comment on its content. In the Middle East, British-Iranian dual national Alireza Al-Bakri, who was sentenced to death in Iran, has been executed. Mr. Akbari's family had been asked to go to his prison for a final visit on Wednesday, and his wife said he had been moved to solitary confinement. The ex-deputy Iranian defense minister was arrested in 2019 and convicted of spying for the UK, which he denied. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said the execution was a callous and cowardly act carried out by a barbaric regime. On his part, UK Foreign Secretary James Cleverly said the execution would not stand unchallenged. The Iranian judiciary's official news outlet Mizan today reported that Alireza Al-Bakri had been hanged without specifying the date when the execution took place. Israeli troops have shot dead 2 Palestinian men in the occupied West Bank during an army raid near a flashpoint town. The Palestinian Ministry of Health disclosed this, revealing that 2 men, Ezadine Amare, aged 24, and Amjad Khalileya, aged 23, were killed during an assault on the village of Jabba, south of Jenin today. In a statement, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad group said Amara and Khalile were its members, describing the 2 men as heroic martyrs. It said they were killed while trying to intervene against the occupation forces, which were carrying out an assassination operation. You're still watching Spring Global on Western Spring Television. We will be right back after this break.
According to the words of Michael Forbes, one who never asks questions either knows everything and nothing. Watch me as I ask the questions you think no one wants to answer. Even questions it appears no one has got the guts to ask. My name is Femi Adefula, and I've got the gun. Let's ask the pertinent questions and watch as we get answers.
Turn it up! It's the Wild Wild West, and Western Spring Television is pulling out all the stops to make sure that you don't miss out on every of the fun and happenings around you. Yup, we've got you covered because your girls got all the juiciest tidbits and entertainment news from around the world. Cross over to the chocolatey side of entertainment. Join me, Chocolate Cassie, on Eccentric as we take you into every bit of the juiciest news, fashion, music, movie updates, and other trending conversations. Together on the show, we'll get personal with your favorite celebrities via phone call, Zoom, or even live here in the studio. Eccentric will be showing on your TV screen on Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on Star Times.
Welcome back. Moving on, in Asia, Indonesia has deployed a warship to its North Natuna Sea to monitor a Chinese Coast Guard vessel that has been active in a resource-rich maritime area both countries claim as their own. The chief of the Indonesian Navy, Laksamana Maryam Muhammad Ali, made this known to newsmen, stating that a warship, maritime patrol plane, and drone have been deployed to monitor the Chinese vessel. It said the Chinese vessel has not conducted any suspicious activities. However, the Navy continued to monitor the vessel as it has been in the country's exclusive economic zone for some time. China's CCG 5901 is the world's largest Coast Guard vessel and is nicknamed the Monster due to its size. The presence of the well-known Chinese vessel may signal increase in Chinese assertiveness and comes after Vietnam and Indonesia concluded an agreement on the boundaries of their ease in the area. Several members of the United Nations Security Council have urged the Taliban to end its repressive treatment of women in Afghanistan as the group continued to impose restrictive policies on their education and work. The 15-member council met privately yesterday at the request of the United Arab Emirates and Japan to discuss the decisions by the Taliban-led administration. The Taliban seized power in Afghanistan in August 2021 following the withdrawal of U.S. troops. Since then, the Taliban has squeezed women out of almost all areas of public life, banning them from secondary and higher education, public sector, work, and visiting parks. 11 members, including Albania, Brazil, Ecuador, France, Gabon, Japan, Malta, Switzerland, UAE, and the United Kingdom and the United States, called on the Taliban to respect the rights of women and girls and their full and equal inclusion across all aspects of society in Afghanistan. In the United States, Republican legislators have launched an investigation into the chaotic United States military withdrawal from Afghanistan, which allowed an immediate takeover by the Taliban. The chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Michael McCaul, disclosed this, stating that he had written to the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, requesting an array of records from intelligence assessments to communications with the Taliban. McCaul, who became the chairman of the committee after the House flipped to Republican control at the start of the year, said it was absurd and disgraceful that Joe Biden's administration continues to withhold information related to the withdrawal. He added that in the event of continued non-compliance, the committee will use the authorities available to it to enforce the request as necessary, including through a compulsory process. The withdrawal led to scenes of thousands of desperate people storming Kabul airport, some clinging to departing U.S. planes as they roll down the runway. Japan Prime Minister Fumio Kishida says Japan, the United States, and Europe must act in unison on China during a visit aimed at enhancing Tokyo's alliance with the U.S. in the face of growing challenges from Beijing. The Japanese Prime Minister made this known during his visit to the United States. President Joe Biden stated that it is imperative for Japan, the United States, and Europe to stand united in managing its respective relationship with China. Mr. Kishida said China is the central challenge for both Japan and the U.S. as China's vision for the international order differs from the views of Tokyo and Washington in some ways the allies can never accept. U.S. President Joe Biden, who received the premiere at the Oval Office, thanked the Japanese leader for his support in the conflict going on in Ukraine.
Importantly, to Japan's defense, the defense of Japan.
もちろん日本の防衛にもフルにコミットしています。
Working closely on tech and economic issues, including the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. And we're stepping up to hold Putin accountable for his unprovoked war in Ukraine. And I want to thank you. Thank you for your strong leadership on this from the very first conversation we had on this.
Brazil's Supreme Court has agreed to include right-wing former President Jair Bolsonaro in its investigation into the storming of government buildings in Brasilia. It is the first time that Mr. Bolsonaro has been named amongst those potentially responsible for the January 8th riots. It comes days after Mr. Bolsonaro posted a video questioning the legitimacy of October's presidential election. Prosecutors said Mr. Bolsonaro may have incited a crime by making such claims. They asked the Supreme Court to include the ex-president in the investigation. Peruvian President Dina Boluarte has apologized for dozens of deaths and protests that have broken out across the country in recent weeks, but insisted that she will not step down. Ms. Boluarte, speaking to the nation in a late-night address yesterday, lamented the violence that has killed more than 40 people since December, mostly protesters, during clashes with security forces. Boluarte, in the address, said some voices that have come from the violent and radical factions are asking for a resignation and provoking the population into chaos, disorder, and destruction. She further apologized for the situation and stated that she will not resign, adding that our commitment is to Peru. Moving over to business, Bitcoin rose today above $20,000 for the first time in over 2 months. Bitcoin, the world's biggest and best-known cryptocurrency, rose 4.6% to $20,853, adding $922 to its previous close. The cryptocurrency is up 26.4% from the year's low of $16,496 on January 1st. Taking some sports stories now, Manchester United staged a stunning late turnaround to come from behind and beat Manchester City in a dramatic derby at Old Trafford. City looked to be closing the gap in Premier League leaders Arsenal after substitute Jack Grealish headed them in front from Kevin De Bruyne's cross on the hour mark. Eric Ten Hag's sides drew level with 12 minutes left as Bruno Fernandes scored despite the presence of Marcus Rashford in an offside position. Rashford was the central figure again 4 minutes later when a swept-in substitute Alejandro Garnacho's cross at the straightforward end to move United to within 1 point of City, who remained 5 points adrift of Arsenal. Nigeria striker Victor Osimhen insists Napoli must keep on fighting as the road is too long for a title talk now. Napoli destroyed title rivals Juventus 5-1 at the Diego Armando Maradona Stadium last night to move 10 points ahead of the Old Lady on the log. Osimhen, who backed the brace, said it was a fantastic night. Before we end Spring Global, here is a recap of our top stories. A Russian missile strike has hit the capital of Ukraine, Kyiv, and other major cities from Chernihiv and Sumy in the north of Zaporizhia, Kherson in the south. Thousands of protesters marched in the Tunisian capital against President Kais Saied's increasingly authoritarian drift, demanding his steps down. Indonesia has deployed a warship to its north Natuna Sea to monitor a Chinese Coast Guard vessel that has been active in a resource-rich maritime area both countries claim as their own. Don't forget to follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. I am Evelyn Ohiola. Thank you so much for your time.